All right, we are live here on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my esteemed colleague and my co host, Drake Wally. We are the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, brought to you by Fan Nation on SI.com. And Drake, we're done talking about Jeff Saturday. He's the Colts coach. He's been here for a week and a half now. It's time to move on and focus on the Eagles. But before we do that, how are you doing, good sir?
Man, I gotta say, I'm feeling good. It's been a really nice week. Thanksgiving's just around the corner. Then right after that, Christmas. So it's big family time, friend time. Really excited. So really excited for Sunday too. Can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fun matchup there at Lucas Oil Stadium. Bailey Savage already given a prediction of Colts beating the Eagles. We'll have to see what our predictions are at the end of the episode. Thanks for joining us. And then Stats Matt, the man himself. What's up, my guy? Thanks for joining us as always. So, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. But then again, when do we not have a lot to talk about on this show? But before we do that, go ahead and as you can see it scrolling across the bottom of your screen, go ahead and follow us. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Horseshoe Huddle on Twitter at Colts on FN. Subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube. Hey, this small little channel of ours that we're just getting going, it's up to over 300 subscribers already. Yeah. So hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you know whenever we go live. And then, of course, follow my man Drake here at D. Walster Drake on Twitter. The man's got his first couple of articles out on the Horseshoe Huddle site, so go check those out. Ooh. And you can follow me, as always, at Andrew Moore NFL. So enough with all of that. Let's dive into some Colts talk, Drake, shall we?
Man.
Before we dive into Colts versus Eagles, let's talk about some Colts news that happened this week. Just a couple of things. Obviously, probably the biggest news of the week was linebacker Shaquille Leonard having season-ending back surgery. He's going to be out for the rest of the year. Honestly, for me, that's probably the best case scenario. Get Shaq healthy. He had surgery back in June. He was still having some issues with the ankle, with the leg, with the back. Things just didn't feel right. So from what I have heard, doctors think that they pinpointed again what was really causing that, and they're hoping now that this fixes things for good. And I think it's going to be good for Leonard as far as having the rest of this year, all off season, just rest and get healthy, so that way you can have a productive career.
Well, and like we had a brief chat about this, before we even aired, and that was that. It does suck to lose a guy that is, by all regards, when he's fully healthy, potentially the absolute best linebacker if you put everything into consideration: coverage, speed, tackling ability, efficiency. I mean, you name it, he's got it. And he even has hardly played and still has an interception on the season. So that shows, the guy's literally barely played. And I think that it's going to be really good, like we said, long-term, immediate. Not great, but we do have, as we'll talk about later, linebackers who have filled that void, and I think it's going to be good for us, like you said, long term.
Right. And Jeff Saturday said he spoke to Shaq Leonard. He's obviously disappointed, but he's in good spirits, and he's ready to get this behind him. So, good thing the surgery went well. Now we just hope for a speedy recovery for Leonard, and hopefully he comes back just as strong, if not stronger, in 2023. Tim Milliken, the loyal listener, said, "I'll be listening but driving, so no smart ass comments from me tonight for Andrew and Dracula. Go Colts." That's a good nickname. Is Dracula or Dracula? We'll see if it keeps going. But then in other Colts news, one other thing from this week, Jonathan Taylor. Shout out to Jonathan Taylor winning AFC Offensive Player of the Week for his performance against the Las Vegas Raiders. 147 yards, a touchdown, the 66-yard TD run, very deserved by number 28.
Well, and like we said in the episode on Monday, he finally had that lightning in a bottle moment. One thing that he does, I'm not even being biased here, that he does for the Indianapolis Colts better than most running backs outside of maybe Derrick Henry or Nick Chubb, is he just generates speed at the it's like a DeLorean. It just out of nowhere you're running after this guy, getting pellets kicked up in your face, and he showed that against the Raiders. So he's very deserving of it. Finally had a big game, got plenty of volume, showed what he can do when the line does its job.
Absolutely. And I was talking to Brandon Moses. You guys know him as my co-host from a Colts podcast. Because Jonathan Taylor had that huge run, he was disappointed that I didn't use his catchphrase of death, taxes, and Jonathan Taylor breaking one
It's
off.
one of
And
my
that,
favorites ever.
I had to
Ever.
bring that out. Shout out to Brandon. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor, well deserved for Offensive Player of the Week. Uh, but enough about what happened last week. It's time to talk about what we got ahead this week. Colts, Eagles, Lucas Oil Stadium. The betting odds on whichever or what site you look at can be a little bit different. I'm going off a FanDuel right here. Colts are 6.5-point underdogs to the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend. Colts obviously coming off that big win against the Raiders in Jeff Saturday's debut. The Eagles coming off their first loss of the season against Taylor Heineke and the Washington Commanders. So the Eagles definitely didn't have their best game. Had a lot to be desired against the Commanders. And I think that loss is probably just going to motivate the Eagles to really want to come in to Lucas Oil Stadium and put that loss behind them and get back on their winning track. So it's going to be a big test for the Colts this weekend.
Well, yeah, and they, Nick Sirianni has shown 100% that he can coach this team to very high levels and got him in the playoffs like right at the edge last year, and unfortunately ran into Tom Brady. So it's going to be the biggest test of the season, in my opinion, even outside of the Chiefs, because I mean, just simply the Eagles overall on both sides of the ball have done better, and they have got one heck of a coaching staff from top to bottom. Jalen Hurts finally looks comfortable. He's hitting passes way better than he did last year. It's still a problem when you put pressure on him, but I mean, they're going to bring it, and they are pissed that they lost to the Commanders, and every ounce of that anger is coming. So we're ready, though.
And I will say this: it seems like when teams, especially teams that are highly favored, or the public, or just the football world in general, thinks really highly of, when they come into Lucas Oil Stadium, it seems like the Colts play them very well. I mean, we talked about the Kansas City Chiefs last year when they played against the New England Patriots, a couple years ago when they played against the Green Bay Packers. This Colts team, it just seems like they play up to their competition. So do I expect it to be a blowout by the Eagles? No, I think it's probably going to be a closer game, and we'll talk about why. So our first topic here, let's get into it, because we have to start with offense. Offense has been the topic of conversation, for good or for bad, all year long. So one of the biggest thing that came out of last week's game, Matt Ryan back starting as the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and he had his most efficient day as a Colt. I went through all the film, and if you read my Ryan review this week, that series is back since Ryan's back out there. I detailed that. I mean, he dominated over the middle. The quick passing game that Parks Frazier got Ryan into a rhythm, kind of moving the pocket a little bit. It was really good for Matt Ryan, and combined with the running game and protection, allowed him to play at his best. So, Drake, I think the biggest question surrounding Matt Ryan is, what is going to be the key to get that out of him again, to get another good game from number two?
Well, I mean, he thrives, as many quarterbacks do. He thrives when he's protected well. We saw it, everybody saw him in that game for the Colts dissecting that Raiders defense, and it was because he had time to sit back there and make his reads. I mean, there was film multiple times where he made 4 reads, no problem. You give that dude time to throw the ball, he's as good as any pocket passer. He's very efficient. And I think it was something you said, actually, is that since he had that 39-yard looking like the Flash out there running the ball. I mean, he said he was confused, actually, in an interview. He said he was confused. He looked like 5 yards down the field. He goes, "Where is everybody?" He was like actually shocked. But you mentioned bootlegs. I think it was you that mentioned he looked pretty good in bootleg situations. I think they need to do that a couple times, play action. And I just think that it's also going to be on the receivers to have to create separation somehow, because they've got got a tough secondary there for Philadelphia. So they're going to put every bit of pressure on the receivers.
I saw somebody say this week that Matt Ryan makes Peyton Manning look like a gazelle out there just because of the speed, the lack of speed, I should say. But hey, that 39-yard run, I'm not going to say anything to belittle that.
That's right.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. It starts up front. It starts with this offensive line, and this isn't the Raiders. This is going to be a big test for this offensive line because the Eagles front really likes to get after the quarterback. I mean, you're talking about Hassan Reddick. You're talking about guys like Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, guys in the middle like a Fletcher Cox. And as Stats Matt says, with Jordan Davis being out is huge, their rookie defensive tackle, but it'll be interesting to see what their new guys being to bring to the table on only a couple days of practice. And what he means by that is Ndamukong Suh was just signed to the Eagles this week, and I think it was, I want to say Laville was his last name.
Linval
Joseph. There you go. Thank you. So it's gonna be a big test for this offensive line. The Raiders overall for the season have been one of the most porous pass rushes in the entire NFL. Completely different story with this Eagles team. They really like to get after the quarterback and get pressure by just rushing their front four. So it's going to be how that Colts offensive line can step up and really protect Matt Ryan back there.
Well, and it's, like you said, the Raiders, it's a great win, but you do have to put it into perspective. Their defense is they're very exploitable, and it's not the same with guys like Fletcher Cox, like directly in front of you, a guy who commands double teams. Same with Reddick at times. He'll command double teams. These guys are relentless towards the football. So it's going to take a Herculean effort legitimately from that offensive line to, be able to keep Matt Ryan from hitting the AstroTurf.
Yeah, right. And I think that kind of transitions us into our next point is not only is the offensive line going to need to be up there to help Matt Ryan, this offensive line needs to play at a high level to help Jonathan Taylor, because in my opinion, this is where the Colts can really attack the Eagles this week. And if you watch that Monday night game of the Commanders versus the Eagles, Taylor Heinicke did not light the world on fire with his arm. He didn't have a touchdown, threw an interception. I think he had maybe 200 yards or something. Very, very average night.
Pedestrian.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. But where the Commanders really lit up the Eagles, and where a lot of teams have lit up the Eagles this year, is on the ground. The Philadelphia Eagles have one of the worst run defenses in the league. And that's not a good matchup for them when they're going up against Jonathan Taylor, who last week looked as healthy and as explosive as he has all season. So really, Drake, what can Jonathan Taylor back up his Raiders performance this week? What do you think we're going to get out of JT?
Well, I think he's as good. I think he has as good a chance as any against this team. And it's very weird because we just talked about the ridiculous level of talent with the Philadelphia Eagles, and especially coming into a very recently revived Colts, offensive line. You would expect, they can stop the run. It's really on the linebackers of the Philadelphia Eagles, because once a running back gets through there, I mean, it seems like the linebackers are pretty bad at bringing the runner down. And you have a guy like Taylor get into even a box of three linebackers, there's, potential for anything to break loose if you can't tackle that guy. So I think he has a great chance. They did get Suh, they did get Joseph. Both, keep in mind, we're waiting to be signed by a team. The Colts needed a guy like that potentially, and they passed on both of those guys. So tells me Philadelphia might be a little bit desperate to try to say, okay, this is a team that could potentially run right through us if we don't get just a couple big bodies, almost like Fletcher Cox, type guys, just there to put, people in front of Taylor.
Right. And I think that is a sign that they need some help there, right in the middle of their defense. So it's Stats Matt says the middle of the offensive line especially is going to be key. If Fries can stay aggressive with Nelson, it should open up some holes. And we saw Will Fries and Braden Smith especially have key blocks on that huge 66-yard run that Jonathan Taylor had. Colts loyalists, thanks for joining us, buddy. Always good to see you. JT and the O-line need to wear out the Eagles D-line. Cox had a ton of snaps along with their new along with testing their new acquisitions, I should say. JT 30 plus carries. Hey, if the Colts are in a spot where they can give the ball to Jonathan Taylor over 30 carries and he continues to move the pile, I mean, I'm all for it. I don't know if they'll get up to that amount, but if Jonathan Taylor is averaging 5 or 6 yards a carry and the Eagles simply cannot stop him, the Colts are going to feed JT. Greg C, thanks for joining us, buddy. He says he agrees. JT time, baby. Perfect storm. Overrated Eagles at underrated Colts. We'll see, man. And then Stats Matt capping it off. The run game should be good. The Washington offensive line is even worse than the Colts has been this year. And that Washington offensive line was able to really make some holes. So if the Colts offense, I don't expect them to light the world on fire through the air. I do expect them to have some success with the ground game, and then maybe they can use that success on the ground game for play action, some RPOs, some play actions, and leading into those rollouts, those bootlegs that you talked about, kind of move in the pocket a little bit to get some guys open. We could definitely see that from Parks Frazier and this Colts offense. But then, I mean, let's talk about what's going to happen on the outside, though, because these are very intriguing matchups. It matches up the young Colts wide receiver core versus some very experienced defensive backs on the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's just go through them one by one here. Michael Pittman Jr., number 1 wide receiver on the Colts, going up against Darius Slay, number 1 cornerback on the Eagles. What do you think, Drake?
That's going to be the matchup to watch for sure. The Colts have Pittman, who is at times can be a high ball guy. He's a separation guy. He's just a lot to handle. His size is a lot of it creates a lot of issues for defensive backs. But Slay is still is one of the best every year, it seems, at coverage. He's led the NFL at times in interceptions. I think one year he had 9. I mean, that is ridiculous for a defensive back to be able to take the ball away 9 times from a professional quarterback. And so got to be really careful. But I like, in the route running department, Slay tends to run your routes for you. He just figures out, he predicts things very well. So I think if Pittman's going to have any chance, he's going to have to out muscle him. He's got to use that size, go high, throw high balls to Pittman. That's the best chance the Colts have at getting him the ball.
Right. And I would like to see Michael Pittman Jr. be a little bit more physical at the catch point. Seems like lately we've seen Pittman get some balls knocked away right there at the catch point. Yep. And he is a bigger wide receiver. He's about 6'4", 220. He should be able to box some guys out, maybe get those long arms out there and try to catch it away from his body. Don't let those defenders to get in there like that. But yeah, I think that's going to be big for Michael Pittman Jr. to really step up and be that key guy on a third down to pick that yardage up, because Matt Ryan's going to be looking his way. Let's get in, as Kurt here says, thanks for joining us. Play action is going to be open, as they will be preventing Jonathan Taylor from breaking loose. That could very well be. And I do hope that the Colts use RPOs, use some play action more to their advantage this week. Colts loyalists saying that Matt Ryan can't be our number 2 rusher. I would assume he probably won't be this week, especially if they get a guy like Deion Jackson back. We'll probably see him get a little bit more, but we'll just have to see what's going on here. So, but yeah, let's move it along to the next option here. Alec Pierce versus James Bradbury. What do you think that matchup's going to look like?
That one's it's I actually have in my notes, it's a carbon copy of what we just talked about, but it's on a different level. There has to be perspective. So obviously Pierce is a rookie. He has kind of the same tangibles, if you will, of Michael Pittman. For the Colts, he's able to go up and get those high balls. Bradbury is a veteran, though, and he knows every trick in the book, but he's not quite on the level of Slay. So I think you almost have the exact same matchup. It's going to take Pierce having to outmuscle. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but these defensive backs for Philadelphia, they're very good. And so you're going to have to do something special to beat them. And I think Alec Pierce, if I had to say, he will be able to kind of outmuscle at times James Bradbury, but it's going to be a tough matchup, just like it is for Pittman.
Yeah, it will. And I think what Alec Pierce, what they have used him for a lot this year is shots over the top. So will Alec Pierce be able to create the space and get that release off the line of scrimmage so they can take those deep shots down the field? I think that's going to be key too, because we didn't really see that too much against the Raiders. It was a lot of short throws. I mean, there were a couple shots here and there, but the Colts really couldn't connect on any of them. And even the 35-yard touchdown from Matt Ryan to Paris Campbell. I mean, it was a 7 to 8 yard slant.
Yep.
Matt Ryan put the ball in the perfect spot, so Paris Campbell didn't need to break stride, and Paris Campbell took it 30 yards to the house just with that pure speed, ran right by everybody. So I do think that the Colts might take some shots over the top just to kind of stretch out that defense. We'll have to see. And then let's talk about it. Paris Campbell, a guy that you're really high on, a guy I was high on coming into the season, that he could really ascend and cement his place on this Colts team. And now he's going to go up against one of the best slot cornerbacks in the league in CJ Gardner-Johnson. How do you like that matchup of Paris Campbell versus CJ?
You know, it's that one's actually going to depend on Matt Ryan. He's going to have to be able to lead Campbell open because Campbell's speed is the killer, and it is, I would say, pretty close to uncoverable, if that is a word. He's able to get open in real short situations, kind of like what you just said. He caught that, I think it was like a 6 or 7 yard little slant route, and he caught it in stride. And Ryan's throw and the ball placement was able to help Campbell just catch it almost with 1 foot right here, and he just puts it right in his arm, and he's gone. And so I do think he's going to have success. Will he have the success he did last week? I think that Nick Sirianni and company looked at that tape, and they were like, "Look, we have to figure out a way to. If he catches that ball, he's going to get catches. We're just going to have to tackle him."
Right. And I do think that Paris Campbell is becoming a vocal point of this offense, especially when Matt Ryan's in there. I put this stat in my Ryan film review. And over the past 3 games that Matt Ryan has been the quarterback for the Colts, Paris Campbell has 24 catches, over 200 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Listen to that.
He's becoming the number 2 wide receiver on this team, even ahead of Alec Pierce by pure volume. So whether they get him on deep shots, whether they work to get him open over the middle with some rub routes with Mo Cox, like we've seen, try to get those mesh concepts where they get guys going in different directions. I think that's going to be big just to get Paris Campbell with the ball in the open field. That's when he's the most dangerous. And I didn't have this. We hadn't talked about this beforehand, but it's a good question. Kurt asked it earlier. Big game from a tight end this week, asking that question. And then Tim Milliken comes in asking, our tight ends over the middle against their D should be available all day. And Tim, you took the words right out of my mouth. Granson, Kylan Granson. I think if there's any tight end, it's going to be Granson this week because Mo Cox, I mean, he could get involved, but Mo has been more of that blocker role this season. Jelani Woods still dealing with a shoulder injury. He missed practice again today. There's no guarantee he'll be out there. But a guy that's ascending is Kylan Granson. Do you think Granson is going to make a splash on Sunday?
You know, Matt, one thing I did say about Matt Ryan is he's had Tony Gonzalez. He has had Austin Hooper, and he really helped out. Once Austin Hooper lost Ryan, came a far different tight end. Ryan loves himself a good tight end. Okay, so I think that Kylan Granson showed last week. He was my kind of like wild card player of the game for the Colts, and for good reason. 4 throws, all 4 caught, and he was able to be almost like that Dallas Clark that this team has been looking for since he departed. So I think he's going to have a good game. I do.
Right. And it could be the guy that nobody's talking about is Kylan Granson. And surprisingly, the kid still does not have a touchdown in the NFL. Maybe that changes this weekend. And Greg brings up a good point here. The Eagles haven't played great teams, but they haven't beat themselves either. And I think that's a good point because the Eagles do lead the league in turnover differential. They force a lot of turnovers and they don't turn the ball over that much either. It was kind of like the Colts last year where they turned the ball over a lot. This year, the Colts they forced turnovers a lot, but this year the defense hasn't forced that many turnovers. So let's get into it. The Colts defense versus the Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Mm.
Obviously, going up against an MVP candidate in Jalen Hurts, who
Mhm.
has ascended this year, become a very good young quarterback in this league. Drake, I'm going to ask you to put on the headset of Gus Bradley real quick. How are you going to contain Jalen Hurts?
I mean, there's no worse pressure than right up the middle, right in your face. And they have a world breaker in Grover Stewart who somehow has like a 50 freaking tackles. And so he has been lights out, potentially the second best defensive tackle in the league. And Buckner on the other side, they need internal pressure to force him outside. But you're also going to need to have Ngakwe and Odeyingbo contain on the outside. So it's really important for those defensive ends to keep that outside sealed and try to allow DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart and the other defensive tackles to go to work. And that brings me to the last point: is you're going to have to have somehow one of those linebackers to play spy. They're going to have to watch every move from Jalen Hurts because he's a nightmare when he gets in the open field.
Yeah, and I want to bring up the name that our colleague Zach Hicks has given Grover Stewart, calling him Grover the Guard Butcher, kind of going off the Gore the God Butcher from Thor Love and Thunder. But I digress. Yeah, I think it's all about contain with Jalen Hurts because of his threat to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the play starts to break down and Jalen Hurts escapes the pocket, that's when the big plays happen. So it's going to be about Yannick Ngakoue, Dio Dangbo, Odenigbo, Ifedi Odenigbo. You talked about it, keeping Jalen Hurts and kind of using a Frank Reich term, keeping him in the well, keeping him in that pocket so that way he doesn't get outside there. Play starts to break down and he ends up running it for 15 yards and a crucial first down on 3rd and 8, or completing a 30-yard pass to AJ Brown over the middle. So that's going to be huge. That's really going to be huge. And as Stats Matt said, Franklin has to spy.
Yep.
We very well could see Zaire Franklin as the spy, since Bobby Okereke is more likely to be the guy that takes over the coverage role. Zaire kind of roams the middle of the field there and makes those tackles. We very well could see it. And I'd be comfortable with Zaire being back there. He's quick. He's very smart. You just can't make mental errors when you're going up against Jalen Hurts.
Well, and I think it was Greg. Forgive me if I'm wrong. That mentioned the tight ends will feast all day. Well, now we're going to flip it over to the Eagles. They lost, in my humble football opinion, the most overlooked and underrated tight end in Dallas Goedert. He's not
Love Dallas
playing.
Goedert.
That is first off, it screwed my fantasy team. So let's just let that go. Second off, they actually will have to implement a 3 tight end rotation to replace his skill level. So Hertz is not going to be able to find a lot over the middle. Okay, it's going to be a lot of Zaire Franklin, in my opinion, and kind of what was just said, staring right at him, because he doesn't have to worry about that, that stretch right down the middle of the field that Goddard always threatened and made you kind of follow him.
Right. And you're just not going to replace a guy like Dallas Goedert, top
No,
5 tight
not
end
at
in
all.
the NFL. You can't replace that. It's going to be a committee approach, and it's taking away one of Jalen Hurts' most valuable and most used weapons out there. But I think what we're going to see, we're going to see the Colts offense run the football a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think the Eagles offense, they're predicated a lot on running the football. They're one of the best teams in the league at running the football, and the Colts have one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Who you got on the strength on strength matchup? Eagles run offense versus Colts run defense.
Oh man! So you said the Eagles run offense, right?
Eagles rushing attack on offense versus the Colts run defense, led by Grover the Guard Butcher.
Well, they've played they played far better against the run than they have pressuring the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're going to have Hurts throw the ball. I mean, the Eagles are going to need to have Hurts throw the ball. It's in Indianapolis. Not a lot of Philly fans are going to be there. It's going to be loud. Sirianni's back. I mean, there's going to be an energy that is going to basically tell them before they even walk in the building, your strengths aren't going to work here. I mean, they're going to need to rely on Hurts to. I think he's going to have to throw the ball at least 30 times.
I think that's what the Colts are kind of expecting. They're going to focus on the run. They're going to make sure they put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hands. And while he's more than capable of doing that, he's very accurate with the football. He makes good decisions with the football. He's hardly turned it over this year.
Oh yeah.
When you take his legs out of it, you take Miles Sanders out of it, take that rushing attack so the Eagles can't just methodically wear you down, going down up and down the football field. It puts it squarely in on Jalen Hurts. So when you have guys like Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner up front that can really force that, you're going to probably see a little bit. But if the Eagles defense or if the Eagles offense starts to get that rushing attack going, I think the Colts could be in big trouble, because I think that could open the floodgates and we could be looking to the Eagles just running all over Indianapolis. But here's a big thing too. The Eagles, we talked about Dallas Goedert not being there, but they still have some pretty good guys on the outside. So let's start with A.J. Brown, probably going up against Stephon Gilmore for most of the game. And A.J. Brown, man, Colts fans were happy when the Titans traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles, because it seemed like twice a year, A.J. Brown would just have a field day against this Indianapolis Colts secondary. But he never faced the Colts going up against Stephon Gilmore. How do you expect that to play out on Sunday?
That's going to be a war. That's going to be a war of attrition at the wide receiver and defensive back position. I think you're going to see Stephon Gilmore play off of him, on him. He's going to get physical. He's going to be lax. He's going to throw so many looks at A.J. Brown, and he's just going to try to defeat Gilmore with speed. And it's going to be, I don't even know. They're both so ridiculously skilled. I think A.J. Brown doesn't get talked about enough in the elite wide receiver conversation, and he really should be, because he is an absolute killer if you allow him to get one step on you. So I would say I favor Gilmore just because he's been able to shut people out completely. But it's just such a tough matchup.
Stats Matt was talking about what I was thinking. No Bobby Okereke on A.J. Brown. I agree. Yeah. I agree completely there. But what I expect Nick Sirianni and the Eagles to do is really move A.J. Brown around a lot. They're not just going to let him go one-on-one with Stephon Gilmore the entire game. They're going to put him in motion. They're going to put him in the slot, get him a size advantage on Kenny Moore. They're going to probably move him over to the side where Isaiah Rodgers is, because A.J. Brown is quite a bit bigger than Isaiah Rodgers. Rodgers has the speed, and he's a dog. He can fight. But Brown's a big physical wide receiver. So they're gonna move him around. I'm sure AJ Brown's gonna get his, but the key is to not let him take over the game, or not allow him to have one of these game-breaking 45-yard touchdown grabs that just completely drains the defense of any confidence they might have. And then let's talk about the other matchup quickly. Devontae Smith on Isaiah Rodgers and Brandon Faison. Honestly, I like Isaiah Rodgers in that matchup, because I think Isaiah Rodgers can be a little bit more physical on Devontae Smith. He can kind of mess around and get into his head a little bit. So I like Isaiah Rodgers Sr. in that matchup. Isaiah Rodgers Sr. didn't practice today because of an illness, so hopefully he's over that by game time. But who would you take, Smith or Rodgers Sr. in that case?
I mean, Devontae Smith is very impressive. But I'm right there with you. Rodgers Sr. is a special player that is just getting more and more special. He's really starting to fill into that legitimate role that he needs to get more snaps, like needs to be on the field as much as possible within his physical limits, of course. So I would give it to him. Now, if he's out and it's Faison, I would, I respect Faison. He's a good support. He's a good support back, but I mean, that could be potentially a big game for Devontae Smith.
I mean, he's been a liability in coverage. There's just no other way to put it.
Yeah.
The Colts are much better when Isaiah Rodgers is out there. Yeah. And I mentioned he wasn't out there at practice. Let's get into the injury report, shall we? Kind of talking about the guys that haven't been out there this week. So the guys that did not practice today were Isaiah Rodgers with an illness, Zaire Franklin with an illness, and Kenny Moore II with an illness. So there's a little bit of a bug going around the Colts locker room room. Hopefully it's nothing too serious and those guys can be up and ready to go on Sunday. DeForest Buckner had a little bit of a neck issue on Wednesday, but he was full today. Deion Jackson finally returned to practice as a limited participant today. So that's good to see. Jelani Woods, now he was limited on Wednesday. He missed last week with a shoulder injury, did not practice today. So he is still dealing with that shoulder injury. His status at best is up in the air for Sunday. And then the other guy that kind of popped up is Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye tweaked his ankle in the game against the Raiders, left and did not return. He was seen on the sidelines in a walking boot, hasn't practiced all week. I would expect Kwity Paye to be out this week, which means Dio Dangbo, Ifedi Adenabo. Those are the guys that are going to have to fill in on that side opposite of Yannick Ngakoue to try to not only keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket, contain him, but also get some pressure on him, try to bring him down for some sacks. So,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say we need to see a big game from Ngakoue. That's one of the things I was going to say. So.
Yep. He has maybe the most quiet 4.5, 5 sacks of the year. It seems like there's a lot of stretches where Ngakoue goes missing, doesn't have an impact. And when you're paying him $10-13 million, whatever he's getting paid this year, that needs a change. He needs to be more of a force disrupting the opposing quarterbacks. So, okay, man, let's get into it. Bold predictions and keys to victory. I should switch this around, put keys to victory first, because I do want to start out with that. So, what are your main keys to victory? Do you think the Colts, what is it going to take for the Colts to pull off the upset against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday?
Well, they have to pressure Hurts up the middle, and they also have to contain him. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, you cannot let his legs defeat you. Make him throw you got to make him throw the ball. That's what he struggled with last year. If you put pressure on him, you make him throw a whole lot, and typically they're running the ball, and you could bring some real issues for him. And then on the other side of the ball, they're going to need to run it. They're going to have to get Taylor a good rhythm, get him touches in the passing game as well. Get his legs nice, warm, and moving, and let's see what he can do against one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL.
Yeah, Colts Loyals is right there with you. Run the damn ball, he says. You're not wearing your hoodie tonight, but we always know, back Drake, there. With you, it's back there. Your motto is still there. I really think it is going to be on this offensive line. We saw him do well against a porous Raiders front. This is a completely different challenge. The Eagles are going to be bringing it. They're going to want to get after Matt Ryan. They smell blood in the water because they know that the Colts offensive line for most of the year anyway has struggled. They're going to want to continue to get after that and see if they can kind of switch the tide back to that side. It's all going to be about how this offensive line attacks. Can they open holes for Jonathan Taylor to get going? Can they keep Matt Ryan protected so that way he can make his reads and get the ball down the field? It's all going to be on that offensive line. And then on the other side of the ball, I really think it's going to be about containing Jalen Hurts. I think the Colts are going to get some pressure. Buckner's going to be there. Grover Stewart's going to be there. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is guys like the guys that just haven't been in there, like Odangbo, like Adenigbo. Yannick Ngakoue sometimes rushes a little bit far. They don't have their best edge setter on the edge, and Kwity Paye is probably not going to be out there. So you got to make sure you keep Jalen Hurts contained. Don't let him run wild, and make sure that they make life harder on him, force him to be that pocket passer. Otherwise, I think this Eagles offense can really thrive.
Yeah, it could be a real issue. I mean, like we said, the big thing about Hurts that always freezes a defensive back, that always freezes a linebacker, is his legs. He starts like even play action. I mean, you start running the ball enough with Sanders, with Gainwell, with all those guys, Scott, all those guys. I mean, the Eagles, they're almost like the Ravens are sometimes under Greg Roman with that rushing attack. They got a lot of ways to kill you with that rushing attack, but they also have some burners down the field. So they cannot let them establish the run, especially with Jalen Hurts.
Right. And Stats Matt says time of possession is going to be the key to victory. And I think he's right, because when you're talking about the Colts running the ball, when you talk about the Eagles, usually they take advantage of running the ball, and that's their main source of offense. I think it really is going to be a time of possession, and whose offense can handle that pressure the best on Sunday. So, all right, Drake, give me some bold predictions. Give me something that I'm not expecting to happen, but it's going to blow my mind when I see it in person there at Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday.
Well, I had two, but one of them I'm like, that's probably definitely going to happen because it happens most of the time. So I'll go with the one that was kind of shocking. Alec Pierce finds the end zone twice.
Oh, okay. Okay. Think he's going to get the best of James Bradbury out
I
there?
think that Pittman's going to be. I think there's going to be times where Pittman and Campbell are both sealed up, and I think that Bradbury is a little undersized for a guy that's got those lanky arms like Pierce does. I think the Colts are going to benefit from it, and Ryan will too.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go a little bit different. I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to double his touchdown from the 2022 season. I think JT gets in twice. I think it's going to be on a longer run, and I think that he's going to be able to run behind Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly along the goal line and get in for another one. I see Jonathan Taylor getting 2 scores, and then I think the third score from the Colts is going to be Kylan Granson. I think just the way those linebackers in Philadelphia, they're not usually who they rely upon.
Mm-hmm.
That might be their weak spot in their defense. Maybe Kylan Granson gets his first touchdown this weekend. We'll see. Stats Matt, his bold prediction is going to have a similar stat line to last week: 200 rushing, 200 passing, and we get 4 TDs this week. 2 turnovers on defense. Stats Matt expecting a huge game out of Indianapolis. And Colts loyalist says Grover gets 3 tackles for loss. Would love to see the.
I had
guard.
5 total tackles as the other take, but he always does.
Would love to see the guard butcher getting in there. So, all right. It's time, Drake. Colts, Eagles, 1 o'clock, CBS, Lucas Oil Stadium. Who you got?
So I got to be realistic here. So the spread is crazy, by the way. If you are a betting person, go smash that spread in favor of the Colts. I do think it's going to be 27-24 Philly.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a war.
I do too. I think it's going to be a little bit higher scoring like that. And as of right now, I think the Colts are going to play them tough. I really do. Right now, I'm leaning Eagles just because I think they're upset. I love that score of 27-24. I might even go 30-24 Eagles.
Also fair.
But there's one caveat that comes with this. If the Colts can keep this close and they can get the ball back to Matty Ice late in the game, 3 minutes left, and the Eagles are up by less than a touchdown, I'd be scared if I was the Eagles. So I'll just leave it at that. So either way, I think it's going to be a great game. Stats Matt says 31-27 Colts. So hopefully Stats Matt is
we're all
right.
kind of in the same ballpark.
Hopefully Stats Matt is right and we are wrong. But hey, everyone, thanks again for joining us tonight. It was a fantastic show. Loved the participation in the comments. Stats Matt, as always, good to see you, Colts loyalists. We had some new ones in here like Greg, like Kurt, Tim Milliken, loyal listener. Great to see you too, my guy. Great episode, Drake. Really was. So enjoyed everybody being here again. Please go follow us on all the platforms for Horseshoe Huddle. Like us on Facebook. Follow on Twitter at Colts on FN. Please subscribe to the YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the bell so you know when Drake and I are going to go live. I'm Andrew Moore at Andrew Moore NFL. He's Drake Wally at D Walster Drake. And we'll see you guys on Monday, 7 o'clock, to break down Colts versus Eagles. We'll see you then.